everybody to this evening's general meeting. We call the meeting to order. We have acceptance of the agenda, rules of order, follow-up from the May 23rd general meeting. We have a presentation on the natural gas expansion, on the proposed natural gas expansion. We have a presentation on the Akwesasne law updates. We'll provide an update on the Grass River cleanup. We'll also provide an update on the CDSA design thinking initiative. We'll take business from the floor. We have a resolution that we need to pass this evening, and then we will announce the next meeting date. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? None. Could I have a mover to accept? Moved by Tony, seconded by Joe. All in favor? All right, the agenda is carried. So I'm pleased to announce that this evening we have all of our members of council here. This is we welcome aboard District Chief Vanessa Adams. This is her first general meeting, and she was sworn into office 2 weeks ago on Thursday, or today, actually. So I want to welcome her to her first official general meeting. So as well. As we have always done, we want to pay recognition for the members of the community that we have lost since the last general meeting. So I'll ask for a moment of silence to recognize those members. All right, thank you very much. So on behalf of myself and the council, we express our condolences to any members and families that have been suffered by loss over the last month. All right, so the rules of order for this evening's general meeting. Excuse me, I forgot to mention that District Chief Toby Mitchell was here earlier, but unfortunately had a reaction and had to depart. So my apologies for not doing that as soon. So our rules of order for tonight's meeting will be that the meeting starts at 6 p.m. and will proceed to approximately 8 p.m. Depending on the dialogue and discussion which is happening, we may extend to a bit further. Personal issues will not be dealt with in this forum. Any personal issues that want to be discussed, we will take back and have set a meeting up between district chiefs or myself to discuss that issue in private, not in this forum. We ask that you please remain respectful at all times. We ask that you please raise your hand when you have a question or would like to address council. I will create a speaking list. Please be called upon to speak. As well as we please ask that you keep your questions and comments relevant to the presentation or conversation we're having at the time. If other issues want to be discussed, there's a time on the agenda to speak about that, and that's business from the floor. As well, our general meetings are recorded, so we ask that if you want to raise something with an MCA staff member, please not address using the staff member's name because they are not here to respond. And the recordings happen only of council for the meeting, for sharing with other community members that aren't able to join us. As well, if there are questions or items that we cannot answer here or that we need to follow up on, we will create a list of follow-up items and we will report those back to you at the following general meeting as to what those questions or concerns or follow-up are. So that is our rules of order for this evening. We will proceed to the next item, which is the follow-up from the last general meeting on May 23rd. So all of you have the packages there. There are no items of follow-up from the last general meeting. So there's none to report on this. All right. So our first presentation this evening, you may recall or have seen some information or heard some information that we're undertaking to do a survey of the community on the possible expansion of natural gas onto Cornwall Island. So this evening we wanted to provide an update on that, give a high-level overview of the project, talk about some next steps as well. We do have some community surveyors that will be assisting with that project, and we we have them here today. We want to introduce them to you and share that information. So we are joined this evening by Pete Beliquet, who's an energy consultant who's helping with this project for the Mohawk Council as we move through the community information phase and a door-to-door survey. So I'll turn it over to you, Pete, and you can introduce the members as well when it's your turn.
Thank you, Ground Chief. I have a slide at the end with all the names of the team. Next slide. Whoa. We're missing a little bit here. No, we can go back, sorry. Nope. Keep going back. Yes, there we go. That doesn't show up all that well, unfortunately. Basically, some of this material has been presented previously to the community at some of our meetings. It just basically says that back when 2009, the cooperation and land use agreement with Enbridge was signed, Akwesasne finally got compensation for the pipeline. It's a natural gas pipeline that crosses Cornwall Island and feeds upstate New York with natural gas, as well as there was a commitment in that agreement to explore natural gas distribution on Cornwall Island, given that there's been community interest over the years. Since then, Ontario in recent years has made it clear it wants to expand natural gas distribution so that more people can share in the benefits. And the proposed Cornwall Island project has been approved for about $3.5 million in funding. The underlying goals when this project first came to be a possibility were, number one, address the high energy costs on Cornwall Island, as natural gas could potentially save homeowners and businesses anywhere from 30 to 50% on their annual heating and hot water heating costs, depending on their current source of energy. It's also an exercise in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, as because of its lower carbon content, when natural gas is burned, it produces about 20% less greenhouse gases than propane and about 25% less than fuel oil or heating oil. It also has the opportunity to drive both short-term and long-term economic development in terms of jobs and business growth, and the way the agreement with Enbridge would be structured would allow Akwesasne to potentially own the distribution system in the future, which would also create more employment in the community. We go to the next slide, please. This is a map most people have seen, I believe, before. It just shows the proposed piping on Cornwall Island. For those that haven't seen it, I'm sorry, I just kind of stand here to do this. This is the pipeline that comes down from St. Andrews West, where it takes gas from TransCanada, brings it across the island. It's now under the North Channel, crossing Cornwall Island, going up on the second bridge, and feeding upstate New York with natural gas. The idea would be to connect to that pipeline, install a pressure reducing station, and actually, if we go to the next slide, I believe that's in it all written out. Yeah, would involve tapping into the existing 12-inch pipeline that crosses the island and feeds New York, installing a pressure reducing station to reduce the pressure to 60 pounds per square inch, and installing approximately 21 kilometers of natural gas line along Island Road and existing side roads in the existing right-of-way. Island Road would be piped with about 2 kilometers of 4-inch plastic and about 6 kilometers of 2-inch plastic pipe. I should have brought our demo samples for those that hadn't seen them. Oh, we do have demo samples. Beautiful. Just if folks haven't seen these, this just gives you a bit of an idea what plastic pipe looks like. This is 4-inch plastic polyethylene pipe. The 60-pound gas would travel through that. Again, you would have about 2 kilometers of 4-inch along Island Road, and then you'd have about 6 kilometers of a slightly larger diameter pipe, which is 2-inch, and then all of the side roads would be piped with 1.25-inch plastic pipe, which kind of looks like this. After that, most homes and businesses would be fed with what's it's called a service. Just like when you think about the water main project, you had mains for the water in the street. These would be called, all these plastic pipes would be called glass mains. And then off the gas mains, going to the individual home or business is a service. So like a water service, same idea. In this case, it's about 1/2 inch, and it just connects, it melts right on top. And it has a safety device in there that if it detected the line was cut or there was too much gas flowing, it would automatically shut it down. Basically, as then the service comes to the house, it comes up out of the ground in a rigid pipe, and there's a pressure regulator that further drops the pressure to 1/4 of 1 psi, so very, very low pressure before entering the building. Construction would take approximately 21 weeks, and it appears at this point that spring, summer 2020 would be the earliest possible construction window. Total project cost is about $8.4 million. Okay, go to the next slide, please. Progress to date. The MCA is focused on community awareness, education, and consultation, and to that effect has developed and distributed some communication materials, developed an online FAQ document, held a lunch and learn with MCA staff, held multiple focus meetings, presented at some general meetings, met with local business owners, and presented on CKON. The next steps are to finalize and drop off a comprehensive communication package, hold a focus session in the form of an open house with Enbridge personnel present. That was something we heard last fall, that the community would like to actually be able to meet some of the Enbridge folks and question them and talk to them about the project. So we're going to be doing that. We're also looking at setting up a drop-in center, so if people wanted extra information on the project, they could go to the drop-in center. The drop-in center wouldn't be running all day, but there would be a posted schedule. Typically, drop-in centers work well from kind of 4 o'clock to say 7 o'clock or something like that in the evening when people are getting home from work, and if they want to get out and just ask a few questions, they could pop in there. And then the big exercise, and I'll be introducing the team that the Grand Chief mentioned in a second, is basically to conduct a door-to-door survey to answer any additional questions that home and business owners may have, and essentially assess the level of support for the project and to determine whether it should proceed. If the outcome is positive, the MCA and Enbridge would work together to move the project forward, which would of course involve conducting a harmonized environmental assessment, much like what was done in 2011 when the pipeline was relocated off the bridge and under the North Channel and back onto Cornwall Island. So last but not least, the MCA has hired 5 summer students to assist with developing the communication package and conducting the door-to-door survey. The team members are, and I know I see 3 of them here, I believe. We have Taylor Day, who's going to be our team lead, and we have Cameron Ransom in between, and we have Moon Pike. So these folks are going to be going door to door initially to actually drop off the communication package, and then from there coming back, circling back full circle to conduct that door-to-door survey and answer any questions and get a sense of how those business and homeowners feel towards the project as in terms of whether they're going to convert or not.
So we have some material that was printed in your packages. I just want to say that it is draft, it's not complete. My apologies. We had a printing issue. We didn't get the final one out to you, so that is informational and it is draft. But Taylor will be assisting, and the team will be assisting with sharing this information, going door to door. And if you just want to walk through it really quickly, Taylor, I think that would be great.
Can we stay here?
Pardon?
Can we stay here?
Yes, you can.
Don't fix that camera. So the past 3 to 4 weeks now, we've just been doing a lot of research on the project itself, and we're like trying to come up with more questions that the community may ask. We know the community better than outside sources, so we were thinking of things that may not have been thought of, or questions, concerns, like that. Throughout our research, we've come up with more and more questions to be asked. Our main concern was getting the information out to the community. I worked at MCA, Mohawk government 2 years ago, and I know how hard it can be to relay information to the community members. So that's something I really want to stress, is that to make sure that the Illinois residents understand everything that's going on and know it's not a crude oil pipeline and things like that. So in order to make the information, the language, everything more accessible, we revamped the communication package. And so, like Abram said, it's just an example for now. So you'll be getting like the introduction letter that is pretty explanatory, just introduces the project, what it is. The rest of my team have been working for 2 weeks now on adding to the FAQs and trying to find what the community will be more interested in knowing. We had a misprint, like Andrew said, and some questions that we didn't answer yet are back. That's on us. But yeah, you'll be getting something like this in a folder. We're going to try to hand deliver it house to house before we do the survey, so we know that you can get it. Because things go missing. And then as well, we created like a very not accessible, but easier to read and quick rundown of the natural gas line and everything in the project. So we put it into a direct
program.
Yeah. So it's not going to be that big of it. It'll be, we're going to try to hold it to a nice little, something smaller than that. That was just an example. But we've been working on that, and we've just been working on everything to try to get everything out there unbiased as possible, so you can make the right decision for yourself. So yeah, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Taylor. I'm the team leader, and this is two of the Cameron. But that's everything that we've been working on. I'll be here for the next while, maybe till the end. If anyone has questions that they don't want to ask in front of people, and I'm going to take them down and then hopefully get your contact information and contact you and answer your question. And if it's something that's frequently asked, we'll go to the frequently asked questions.
All right. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, was this ever on the table before? Previous years, was it on the table as far as negotiating this? Is there a report years back where it was offered, natural gas was offered to the island before?
So one thing that we found that wasn't really out there was that Akwesasne got the grant through the Ontario government, through the natural gas program, the grant program. That only came through last year, and that's when it became a reality that it could happen because the rest of the money would be covered. So they cover so much and Enbridge covers the rest. So it's been a topic since about last summer, I think. Pete and Abram can talk more about it. But it's been in the works for about a year now, and we're trying to do the final steps. We've also been working with environment and Scott over there. We did a tour with them today to see if there's. It won't be. We weren't doing an environmental assessment, but we were going through and seeing potential obstacles or risks or anything. Yeah.
Well, see, that's what my question is, because years ago they brought up that it was offered to the island. The island didn't want it, we were paying natural gas. So I was just wondering if there was an environmental assessment done at that time, like to look at and say, there was an assessment done or whatever. I'm just wondering, because it was offered before, a lot of the homework should be done.
I personally don't know, but
I know there were a couple of times in the past when Akwesasne approached Enbridge. There was a gentleman named Sid Laffin who came to the table proposing an Akwesasne gas. Prior to that, there were some studies that went on to look at electricity generation on Cornwall Island, and so it would have been potentially, I think they were talking about calling it Mohawk Power, and they were looking at a cogen facility, so a facility that would have produced electricity and heat. So I know Enbridge in those years, and I think it was late 90s or early 2000s, did a quick feasibility study. I'm not sure if any EA work would have been done at the time, but ultimately that cogen never really materialized. So the project at that point was not feasible, from my understanding.
And also, could you tell me where that transfer station is located?
It seems to me, it's going to be by the crossroads. It seems to me I need to go back and look at the amount of pipe. It's not a large amount of. They would basically tie into the the 12-inch with a small section of 2-inch steel pipe. A transfer station is not a large, it's not like when you see these big giant hydro things. It would be called basically a district station. And a district station, and I can't, Enbridge would be the one to tell you how big it's going to be, but the ones I've seen in the past in my career for district stations going into, say, subdivisions or smaller communities, they're not much larger than this table and maybe just a little bit taller. And they basically take the higher pressure gas and drop it down to the lower pressure of 60 psi, and then it goes into the plastic pipe and gets distributed across all of the main roads.
Now that would be an isolation valve?
Yes, there'd be shut-off valves there. There's also typically strategic shut-off valves within the network, the way it's designed. And as I indicated, each one of these services, right here at the T, it actually says it on it. So I'll take my glasses off because I'm losing my eyesight here. It is an excess flow valve right there, so that if this line were severed or if there was a major leak downstream of this service, this valve right here automatically shuts off.
What about the mains?
The mains do not have excess flow valves because typically if the main is severed, you will get gas blowing to atmosphere. At that point, Enbridge would respond, fire department would likely respond as well. They will shut off the isolation valves and make the repair.
Because this main line that crosses the island,
Yes.
you know, 600 pounds, right? That's high pressure line.
I don't believe it's 600 pounds. I believe it's less than that.
Would they ever shut that main down, or would they just lower the pressure?
If they have to shut it down, there are automatic valves at both sides, on the New York State side and on the Ontario side in Cornwall. And if there ever was a leak detected on that line, it is being monitored 24/7. If there was a major leak discovered, there's 2 valves that will shut on both sides and shut that line down completely.
Yeah, but what about the island, hooked up to the island, and the transfer station, you got lower the pressure?
But they will vent.
Can you shut this end of the island off and still keep the main running?
Oh yes, oh yes, yes, the big pipe you mean.
Yeah.
Oh yes, yes, they'll set it up. It's just like they'll set up valves. And I mean, I'm not the design expert. These are really good questions to ask when the Enbridge folks are here. I did work there for a long time. I'm familiar with design. They isolate certain areas with valves. So say at the end of the island there was a pipe had been damaged, they can shut off that valve and just shut that portion of the distribution system off so everyone else still has gas. It's a way of isolating the system and preventing large-scale outages.
The life expectancy of this, when the attack on fossil fuels, right? Is this going to outlive the attack on fossil fuels, or is it attack? The fossil fuels?
Yes.
Yes. How is that going to survive the attack on fossil fuels? Like, are we going to get taxed more? Is it going to cost us more for this?
Right now, gas is significantly cheaper than your energy alternatives. I know the Canadian government has, and the Ontario government has proposed to raise carbon taxes. Natural gas has the least amount of carbon emission of fossil fuels. I do know that they were pushing, so there's a surcharge in there. That would be built into the calculation of savings because all your others, like your oil and your propane, would also have tax on that. What it is, it does have the least amount of carbon, but the molecule itself is CH4, so there's only one carbon molecule. Propane is C3H8, so there's 3 carbons, and then once you go to fuel, diesel, etc., that's like C12H24, so there's a lot more carbon. That's why when we get a city bus, a diesel city bus, accelerated from a stop, you'll often see kind of a lot of older school buses that are
Are there any questions on the presentation? All right, so thank you very much to Pete and the students for providing us with that information. There will be more information sessions, and as described, there will be door-to-door information being distributed, and then there will be a door-to-door survey for interest of the project. The project will not go forward unless there is support from the district for the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Abel, can I just ask a question? When is this going to be ready for renegotiation
Renegotiations
as far as that settlement? The 100,000? Tim, when is that, Tim? I think we're reading this.
It's a 25-year agreement.
So the 20 agreement is 20 year, right, Tim?
20 or 25?
I think it was 20, I have it at home, but I can't remember when it.
I think it may be 20. I think it
Should
may
be
be 20.
12.
So we're halfway there.
When?
Halfway there. It's not even 10 years.
It was signed in 2009.
2009?
So if it is 20, which I do think I remember it being 20, it's half in 10 years.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Okay, so our next presentation that we have is we want to provide an update on the Akwesasne law revisions that are happening and other works that are happening around Akwesasne law. So this evening we're joined by our Justice Coordinator, Kiri Ransom, who will provide us with an overview and update.
And then I'll just let Connie explain because she was one of our portfolio chief who asked us to present.
Welcome, everyone. So in the last few months at our general meeting, community members asked questions about the laws that we have on our registry. We've had questions about what is active, what's not active, what's good, what's enforceable. So instead of addressing them one at a time and not myself having some questions on it about which was when things were enacted and what process was followed during that year, I thought it best to bring in our Justice Coordinator, Kiri Ransom, who's been working on the laws and has done a great deal of research, not only on her, as part of her job, but in the creation of the Legislative Commission and bringing them up to a full active commission now. And the training that she delivered and worked with the commission members on what the laws look like and how they were created and came into being today. And we know that a lot of our comments, or a lot of the comments we heard, was the enforcement of our laws. So that's a struggle. It continues to be a struggle, but we keep working on it. So Kiri's going to go through a presentation that she worked with in the commission, that you provided to the commission.
Yeah, it's a abridged version.
A bridge version of that, for time's sake. So, Kiri?
Yeah. And so this information that was compiled, it's really the product of years of doing research on the history of our laws. And the original presentation that I developed was designed to take place over the course of like 6 3-hour sessions. I'm not going to make you sit here for that long. So we condensed it down into kind of a really quick version of it. With this presentation, it's going to focus mainly on explaining how our law enactment process has evolved over time, and to look at the 31 laws that are currently registered as part of the Akwesasne Law Registry. I do have about 10 copies of this document if anyone wants to take it with them now, or if you have a USB drive, I have a PDF copy if someone wants it. But it's designed as a public resource to explain, here are all of the 31 laws that are on the books, and here are the common components across each of those laws, to help give you a sense of what is currently registered in the Akwesasne Law Registry. And so this is a public document that we do provide to the community members so that it's easy for them to kind of flip through. It has an index with titles. It gives you a snapshot of that history. And this was actually a research project that was done by a number of our Akwesasne summer students who have worked through summer jobs over a number of years, who have gone through and compiled a lot of this information. So it's great that we've had so much support over the years to help do this research. Looking at the history of our community law enactment process, and this is talking about the history for the northern portion of our community. And it really started back in 1956. That's the first law that we had on the books, was bylaw number 1. And that law was dealing with curfew. And in it, it basically said that, if someone, a teenager, was caught out in the community after a certain date, not under the supervision of their parents, then the peacekeepers at the time would take them, bring them home, and charge their parents for not supervising their children and making sure that they were home by curfew. And so that was first done back in 1956. It was later amended in 1959 to increase the fee from $5 to $10. But it was really the thing that started all of the laws that we developed over time. And so during this time period from 1956 through 1988, it was really following a process of using 3 readings of the law. And these laws would be passed by band council resolution, and there were various processes that took place for each of the laws that were developed. And it wasn't very consistent with approach, but generally it was following what was outlined in the Indian Act around the sections dealing with bylaws. In 1988, that's when our community first started solidifying a process. And they did that through a Mohawk Council resolution, which said, you have to bring laws to the community in a public forum if you're going to amend them. And it gave basic structure and steps, and was our first real written down process for doing law enactment. In 1996, the 3 readings process was then turned into a 4-phase process. And that resolution in that process rescinded all of the previous documents that were in place. In 2011, the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne established the Akwesasne Law Registry. And so that's what allowed for this document to be developed. And so it took about 7 years of work to get to the point of having that registry established. In 2012, that's when we had our first very in-depth legislative enactment procedural regulation. So that was passed by council then. It was amended a few times over the years for procedural changes, but a significant change happened, and you can't see it, it's on the corner of the screen here, was in 2015. And that was the introduction of, a reintroduction, I should say, of an Akwesasne Legislative Commission. The Akwesasne Legislative Commission had originally started back in the late 1980s. It was in place for about a decade, and then eventually they started looking, because of the nature of the laws becoming so technical, they started having working tasks in place of that community body. There's been a lot of fluctuation over the process over time, and we're now at a point where we're trying to balance all of these different mechanisms that we've used in the past. This diagram is supposed to help show the spans of time and what was in effect during those time periods. And so the 2 documents that I talked about in the beginning, the 3 reading and the amendment process, those were in place until about 1996, when the 4-phase process started, and then was in place until 2011, or actually 2012, which is when the first legislative enactment regulations came into effect. That carried over until 2015, and so forth. And so during these time periods, whatever that rule of the day is what's followed to amend a law on that given day. And so a lot of the research in getting to this was doing that lineage of what was actually happening in the community as these documents were being enacted, and did it follow the applicable steps that it should have followed at the time. But it's being mindful that the Justice Department itself was established, in the 90s. So everything that was happening in the 80s, there was, a lot of that work of pushing law development is what highlighted the need for a Justice Department and having, clear, defined community engagement as part of the law development process. This document is a diagram and a chart that we've established to be able to speak with our external partners to explain okay, in your view, if it's an external government agency who's asking, you know, well, out of all of your 31 laws, some of them, thank you, Avery. Out of all of the 31 laws, they are all Akwesasne laws, they're all community laws. And some of them, the titles are called bylaw, but they're not actually registered with INAC of the bylaw. Some of them are just called law, but they are registered with INAC as a bylaw. So the titles are misleading, and they're not really consistent. And part of that has to do with looking at the need of the law at the time, and there were variations of whether a law was ever sent to Indian Affairs at all, you know, and that wasn't consistent. And there was reasoning at the time for sending something or not. And so with this, what we tried to do was categorize which laws were registered as a bylaw. And so you'll see that over here on this left-hand column. The laws that are coming into place under Section 10 of the Indian Act, which is the membership code, are election law, which connects to the Indian Act Section 74. And this is all just meant to show relationship at the time. With our couples property law, that one has a relationship to another federal act that's in place, which was the Family Homes on Reserve Act. But over here under community law, we have all of these laws listed here, which were never sent to INAC to be employed through that process of review as a bylaw, but it's still a community law. And then these laws through here are the ones that were disallowed by INAC, but our community still maintains that they are a law that are valid and in place because our community wanted them to be. And then this law that's here, and when I get a little bit more further into the presentation, is the one law that we have on record that was brought to the Confederacy in Onondaga. And so that's kind of an overlay of all of the laws, as well as the court law that are in place. All of these laws that are highlighted right now are the ones that were enacted from 1956 to 1988. And with that, the laws that are listed here that were all disallowed were ones that were enacted by the community after 1982, which is significant because that's when the Constitution of Canada came into effect with Section 35. And I'm really grossly generalizing all of this. But what that ended up doing with our laws in our community is that it ended up having INAC look at our laws with more scrutiny, and what it came down to was the definition of Akwesasne land that we were providing and the definition that Indian Affairs was looking at were different. Indian Affairs said our lands ended at the land farm, at the land farm. We always maintain and argue that Akwesasne lands includes the waterways, beds, and marshes. And so it created conflict in the laws that were in place. And so they would send us letters and say, out of the law that you're providing, there are 261 points where you can't maintain this jurisdiction because your Akwesasne lands definition is including the waterway, beds, and marshes. And so there was a lot of back and forth happening at that time. And so all of these laws were disallowed by INAC for those types of reasons. And the community decided at the time to enact them anyway. And so they went ahead. And coming forward from 1988 into 96, there were a number of laws that came in that, you know, some were sent to INAC to be reviewed as a bylaw, some weren't. But we started having different processes for establishing our laws and how do we want to approach as a community enacting and developing these laws. In 1996 to 2011, that's when you started to have amendments to the election law. You know, so those were coming through. And also during this time, there's an inconsistency, for example, with INAC's records. So they have a bylaw registry, and so they have all of these laws listed, but they have no mechanisms for taking them off their list if the community rescinded them. And so when you look at INAC's records, they have documents that are there that we no longer have in place or enforce because we've rescinded them or we've amended them. And so the residency law is a good example of that, where we had originally had one in the late 1980s, and then it was amended in 1997. And with that amendment, INAC was okay with the first version, but not the second one. And, so in INAC's record, the 1980 version is valid, but for our community purposes and enforcement, we follow the 1997 document because it better reflects what our community wanted as far as the residency law. Starting from 2011 coming forward, in the last 8 years, we've had 3 laws that have been enacted in the community. And so that includes the Akwesasne court law, the couples property law, and the tobacco law. Right now, what we've been doing over the last couple of years is to start creating a more transparent and consistent process to help identify out of the need that we have in place of laws, how do we pick and prioritize which laws do we work on in a given year. Recognizing that the resources within the Justice Department, we don't have a lot. We have minimal resources, and so where do we allocate them? The Akwesasne Legislative Commission, which was put into place, they completed all of their training last year in August, is part of identifying what the workload is within a given year. And so in October of last year, they did a public call out, and they asked for community input into what should we be working on this year. They asked council and said, council, what do you see politically as being the need? And so council provided input. And we also put a call out to department and administration to ask, what do you see as your need? Looking at all of that feedback, they balanced all of that information, thinking about the work that's been done previously, and they came up with a list of 10 laws for this year that we're focusing on. And that's 10 out of 41 files of legislation that need to happen or laws that need to be amended. And so part of this whole process in doing these presentations is to help engage the community, provide them an overview with what we've been doing, and let them know that we have these types of resources in place. Because our goal is to try to ensure that this is as accessible as possible and that there's a process being followed and it's as fair as possible. And so a lot of this work that's been done to date, it's possible because of the previous people in these positions. I always like to acknowledge the work that Louise Thompson had done, who was my predecessor. She was in place for 12 years. She kept thorough records. She kept everything. She kept minutes, she kept MCRs, she kept drafts of documents, notations. And it makes it a lot of material to go through to come up with these resources, but it's rich. Rich in the history of our community and seeing the path that we've been on, and knowing and being able to contextualize where we're going and a lot of the work that still has yet to be done. So that was kind of my trying to be quick overview, condensing 20 hours of training down into as close to 10 minutes as possible. Are there questions? Yes.
Out of how many laws you said, 31?
41 as the need, selected 10.
How many are enforceable?
So all of these laws are currently in force. They're all active laws. And so part of the work that we're doing right now is establishing our justice institutions of our lawmaking, our court. We're in the next phase of working on providing the procedures to be able to help our compliance and AMP officers with the enforcement component.
So they're in training to do that, so right now they're not enforceable.
We've already said that.
Yeah.
We've said that even though there's all these laws, the enforcement of it has been, not the best, and we know that. It has been a challenge. We've done a training program for compliance training, but we still have to get the dollars to increase the numbers of compliance officers. We started work maybe 6 to 8 months ago. We started talking about creating the procedures of all the laws and at what level does compliance handle it to when Mohawk police come in to assist, or does it start with police and then compliance is assisting? You know, so we found that over the years people would call for something for a law and get pushed to AMPS, and if they called AMPS then it got pushed to compliance, so people thought they were just getting bounced around. So we started talking about it quite some time ago, about how do we fix that? You know, what's the best way? And we thought, well, every one of those laws needs to have procedures and how to implement them. So I'm not sure who the students we spoke with a while back. I know somebody at Justice was looking into it with her.
Yeah.
The minimal staff she has, and then the students she gets from either McGill or Queens that'll assist us in some of this work.
And right now, because our justice administration, it's 3 people. The people who handle legislation, it's me. So we're very short-staffed. What we do, though, to try to help compensate is we look for academic partnerships, because there's a lot of good law students who are, you know, able and ready to help us do a lot of this legwork. And it's helping to put in the relationship so that when our students matriculate into these universities, there's that opportunity down the road to be able to pull them in and help develop a lot of these resources that we need in order to do things the right way.
You want to follow up? Go ahead.
Well, in the last few years, you know, we were developing new laws. So instead of just developing new laws, why not work on trying to fix whatever, you've got 41 laws there, and they're not enforceable. So instead of trying to create new ones that are not enforceable, fix what's.
We
So-
said that numerous times at numerous meetings.
So,
I am working on it. We're meeting with public safety. We have proposals for both the Mohawk court and compliance. What we got instead of a compliance program was Indigenous Services decided, okay, let's give you a compliance training program. They gave us funding for that. So we've been going back saying, can we have funding for the program now? You know, you train people, can we employ them? So we're going back and forth to the government to get those funding dollars. And we're saying that we have people not trained now, you know, to work on enforcing it. But we have some, I think personally, we have homework to do on our laws. Well, I'm not saying it's not necessary, it is indeed, but we have to fix everything up here and there, not just bring people in to enforce a law that has no procedures or anything with it. So we got to get that part done too.
yeah, and with the laws that we've done recently, with our Akwesasne court law, it is in effect and being administered. There is a regulation in place. With our couples property law, there is a regulation in place. It is going to be active. With the tobacco law, with that file, it's a matter of establishing another decision-making body to issue licenses. And so that's where the workload has to come in to develop those instruments, and that's hopefully coming this year. Okay?
There's really quickly,
When it comes down to the law, Section 81, you're limited to what you're able to do in Section 81. And the status of the Mohawk Council is program. Everything is in program status. So whatever you do is really limited. So those are the things that you have to make sure that everybody understands. When it comes down to the laws, you have authority to make bylaws. And that's your limit. It's all there on 81.
What is the process? What is the process of a bylaw?
What is the process to, you mean today?
Yeah.
So there actually was a change in the Indian Act that happened back in 2015. It took effect in the 2016 version of the Indian Act that came out, and it removes the minister's discretion to be able to disallow or allow a bylaw, and it leaves that up to the federal court system. And so if community members or outside entities want to challenge a First Nation community's bylaw that's been passed pursuant to Section 81, then the federal court ultimately decides whether it's a valid assertion or law under that section.
The reason I'm asking that question is, the old way was to exercise the powers of the council, like you say, in 81, or 83, the money bylaw in the Indian Act. And to enforce the money bylaw in the Indian Act, what you have to do is to exercise the bylaw, you have to go to meetings, and majority of the band electors have to agree. That's your meeting. And also the council, majority of the council has to agree. The bylaw is then sent to the minister's office for approval. Comes back and it can be approved or not approved by the Minister of Indian Affairs. The reason I'm saying that is that the tobacco law or cannabis law or whatever you come up with, to have a type of business, to issue licenses, you can't just issue a license, go on council and say, no, you're going to buy a license from us. You can't do that unless you have a bylaw approved by the people, majority of the band electors. That's the way it used to be, you know, because the community has to have an input in making that bylaw. It has to be approved by the minister. So I don't know where you get authority. You just mentioned licenses. Where do you get the authority to make a license on tobacco or cannabis issue license? Unless you have that bylaw. No bylaw. So a bylaw is one way, and your laws is another way, and you're calling it community enactment process. And over here, a bylaw is a procedure you have to go through approved by the minister. So you're saying in 2015, you can go another route, you don't have to go to the minister, and you can enact these laws on their own?
Yeah, we are not going through the minister to enact any of our laws.
Are they actually a bylaw?
We don't pursue that. We haven't pursued to get a law recognized as a bylaw since the 90s. And what has been happening since that point is courtesy copies get sent to the minister to let them know that we're enacting laws, but we haven't submitted for a bylaw since the 90s.
I just keep hearing compliance, and everyone wants everyone to be so compliant. I don't ever hear anything about empowerment or education on the other end. So everyone wants everyone to be so compliant, go to bed at 8, wake up at 8, go to work, eat, sleep, whatever. But one thing I have a question about, because you're looking for compliance program, one thing is that I read a few things in Canada where compliance is now getting done. So I'm hoping that our compliance officers here are not
And one of the differences, I don't know about the gun part, that's not my area, but as far as our law development, and that's something that when we look at a lot of the conversations that happened in the past, you're right, a lot of it was looking at how do we make people comply. Right now, what we do when we're writing our laws, it's looking at it more as what do we want to see in our society? What do we want to see our community doing, and what values do we want to see in this law? So that we're recognizing that a majority of our community members, they just want to be safe, they want to be secure, they want to know what the rules are, and if they're logical, if they're rational, they'll follow them. And there's going to be a section of your community that it doesn't matter what you write, they're not going to follow it. And so to write a law based on those few and make it super prescriptive, punitive, with all of those language about how do you make someone comply, it needs to be separated out from actually writing your law. You know, because a lot of the experience of our communities, generally Indigenous communities, is that laws have been used as a tool to hurt communities, to hurt people. And that's not what we do within our department. You know, and that's been one of the changes we've been trying to make with a lot of the work that we've been doing.
How many laws can we have here? We have MCA, we have the tribe, we have the tribal, we have the office, we have Canada, we have New York, we have the United States, like, so, like, you know.
Yeah.
So I always like to keep that in consideration when you're talking about compliance, compliant, like, we live in tight states here.
Yeah. There's another question up in this middle row.
Oh, yeah. The laws and bylaws, you know, I never read up on it. When I became when it started on Comstock when I was chief. Then the laws came in from everywhere. What I was charged with to get Oxted out of there wasn't even a law or bylaw or anything at the time, but it came out. So, is that different from then and today? We can develop a law overnight?
No. No. And a lot of establishing the law enactment process under the more recent legislative enactment regulations and having an Akwesasne legislative commission in place is meant to help create that level of independence from council, but also create a structure that's transparent to the community so that you know there's going to be a notice every year that will come out in January that will tell you here's what the workload is in that given year. For an individual law itself, there will be a notice telling you, all right, we're starting to write this law. There'll be another notice given saying, all right, we're doing consultation on this law. There'll be another notice that'll say, all right, we're bringing this to the community for decision on whether they approve or reject it. And then there'll be a notice saying, here's the decision that was made, and it gets registered in the law registry. And so that the community knows that they can accept if a law gets to the end, whether it's approved or rejected, it's hit all of these steps so that you know what's happening. And that it's there if you want to access it.
Well, the law I was charged with was campaigning too close to the voting rights. That never even came up. It came up overnight when I was in court. Right for my dear life. I was right, but nevertheless, I was outnumbered.
Yeah. Yes.
This is just different.
Okay. Okay.
We passed the matrimonial law.
Yes.
Correct. So if an individual, if a couple, native, both native, and separate, and the house is in the gentleman's name, and he leaves because of domestic issues, and she's left there, so he takes her to court, and then the judge has a conflict of interest, but she still rules on that case, but she doesn't follow what the matrimonial law says. Is she allowed to do that?
So with that situation, it sounds like it's getting down a personal track, but
No, really, it's not. It's just
Well,
it's just hypothetical.
and so hypothetically, those are two different issues. So you have your couples property law, which sets out rules
Yes.
for the situation,
Yes.
which is separate from justice's conduct. So a justice's conduct, regardless of what the issue is, falls under the Akwesasne court law. And so there's a review commission that's in place that reviews a justice's conduct if a community member feels that there's been something wrong with the case.
Or conflict of interest.
Or a conflict of interest. And then it goes to an independent body who is not counsel, who is trained to review that situation for the justices, but they also provide oversight to other boards and commissions within Mohawk Council, so the legislative commission, for example. And so if there's something about a commission member's conduct that someone thinks that there was some impropriety, then the review commission would be the ones to look at the behavior. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions on the presentation? Going once? All right. Thank you very much.
I thought it was supposed to go to a referendum. When Misha Mentor was here, and all of those meetings, it always said a referendum. So how did it come to a special meeting?
Council. Yeah. So she's asking, with the Akwesasne Financial Administration Law, during the information meeting, the working task group member, Misha Mentor, had said that the law would come out to the community in a referendum vote. And with the release that was provided, which indicated that it'll be a special general meeting vote, she's asking why.
So, not sure why that lawyer told you that, because it's not his decision. It would have been council's decision based on various factors. How a law gets enacted, whether it be through a referendum or a vote at a special general meeting. so in this case, that law will go to a vote at a special general meeting.
Okay, Pat?
Do you mean the financial administration law? They vote, who's voting on that?
So right now, the Akwesasne Financial Administration Law, which is one of the laws as part of this year's workload, was, and you're all going to be receiving bulk mail packages. They were put in Canada Post this morning, so over the next week you'll start to receive these packages. And it contains the notice that was received, sent out and distributed last week. It was accepted in principle by council at the end of community consultation. It is now proceeding to community enactment. And so the notice says that council has accepted it in principle, so we can bring it to the community for a vote, which will be held on Saturday, July 27th at 10 a.m. here on Mohawk at the Noalakoa Arena Turtle Room. And so there's provisions that it'll be done through a secret ballot vote at that special general meeting. Leona Benedict will be there to administer the vote. And to be eligible to vote, you have to be on the voters list. So like the general election voters list. So if anyone isn't on the list or you want to verify that you're a voter, you can contact Leona at the Justice Department. And she can check to see if you're on the list or not. So that'll all be information coming out to you within the next week or so.
Yes, over here.
I remember when we had that meeting for the financial thing, that there was going to be meetings on it.
Yes.
We had one here.
Yes.
But nothing happened. So the island people even though it was 3 of us here,
Yeah.
we never got our answers or anything, so it's like, nobody knows what the hell we're gonna be voting on again.
So with the Akwesasne Financial Administration Law, there was an information meeting held in the District of Mohawk in February. We had about 20 community members who came to that session. There are going to be additional information meetings which are scheduled for July 10th, 11th, and 17th. That information is also included in the notice, which will be mailed out to all of you. They will all be held from 6 to 8 p.m. and the working task group members will be there to answer questions that you have about the document. Okay?
That there, we had a meeting with Nation Building. And
That was the second meeting.
it was very informative, but that was just a group of us, so we need to get it out to the community. To vote on it, they need to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a list over here. We have here first, and then next and back to the back.
I just have a question. Why is it so different? Like, you had your matrimonial property law. It was a big referendum. It was a big call for the entire community. All members had to vote on it. You had to have a threshold. And then now you have an Akwesasne administration law. And it's a secret ballot, one day, special meeting, you get your result. Why is such a difference?
Yes. So with the couples property law, there were actually 2 votes that came with that law. So the first one was done in 2013, which enacted the law. The second vote that was done in 2015 was to reaffirm that first decision. And part of that approach of using that larger effort was because the federal legislation at the time was written in a way that we could have our law include certain things, like references to having any matter related to the law go to our Akwesasne court, and the minister had no discretion to take anything out. And so we looked to try to reach the threshold under that specific act so that we would have that additional insurance, I guess you could say, for any instances relating to couples property law. And that it would be an opportunity to help ensure that we would have a working relationship with any external counterparts that we had because we had to administer that law. For any other law following, a lot of the consideration is deciding what method you use for voting, whether it's a referendum or a special general meeting vote. For our department, when we put a recommendation forward, a lot of it has to do with cost. And so for the couples property law, we had a grant of $50,000 to conduct that referendum. Right now, we don't have any grant funding to support law development. And so the cost of being able to hold a referendum is around $12,000. And our department can't absorb that cost all the time. And so for the special general meeting vote decision, I'm not sure what they were weighing, but I know from our department standpoint, one of the biggest factors is always looking at the cost associated.
Okay, over here first.
I just wanted to know that financial administration law that you guys are working on, that's still linked with land use rules as, I don't know if he's got all these acronyms there that he uses. First Nations financial management, whatever.
No, it's not. When the concept of the financial management law, which has been discussed and probably Dave, I looked to you, 7 years ago maybe, when we first brought this forward, it was associated with that. But through since then, and the will of council and the direction of the people, it's been totally dissociated. It's purely a community law, not associated with those at the back.
Oh, I think maybe the reason why you can't absorb that cost and you don't have money to justice is because you aren't a governing body. With no disrespect when you say that. But so with this 10-year grant that, you know, this administrative law will come in, I still would like to know the number of exactly how much that grant is. And I have inquired to see a comparative model of what we look like with that 10-year grant and what we don't look like with that 10-year grant. Because I know that 10-year grant is going to lead into your nation building, your self-governance, that self-determination, get rid of the Indian Act or amending the Indian Act. And I truly want to know what that looks like. Because I think we have a right to know what that looks like in 10 years. Should we do it or should we stay as is with where we're at? So I haven't really gotten any of those answers. And I think that transparency is really important here, especially this day and age with what's coming up to vote on. You know, we can't deceive the people. I'm not being disrespectful in any way. I just think that we have to provide better clarity to people here where we're headed, what's our end goal, what we look like.
Yeah, well, we hear you and we can look to provide that information to you. But again, you don't bring administrative agreements to the community for approval. They are done through administration. But we can provide what the existing law, which is a comprehensive funding agreement between Canada and Akwesasne, which was ratified by council probably about 20 years ago and has been extended about 6 times. So this is a funding agreement between Canada and the community, and what a 10-year grant, what's in this one and what's in that.
Yeah.
That's where I understand you're at.
Yeah.
Yes.
And part of talking about the work of the Justice Department specifically, when you look historically at our department, Canada doesn't fund First Nations justice, period. What they will fund are programs and services that engage with court once somebody has already had an infraction and is in a provincial court, but they don't fund institution development, justice development, the way that we do and the way that we operate here in this community. And so whenever we have any other First Nation communities who come to us, because we do have a lot of other visitors who come here, and once we explain to them the systems that we have in place, the community bodies that we have in place, the level of training that we offer to our community members to fill these roles, the First Nation communities ask, how did you get this? How did you have the funding to do this? And it was a decision of council, and it's been a commitment of council for the last 20 years to continue to fund our department. And it's recognizing that over the last 10 years, because of different things that have happened, we've had to downsize our staff. You know, when I went away to school to coming back, we lost our paralegal, which did a lot of work in our department. And so now it's from landing on myself and the director to pick up that additional workload. You know, so when we're looking at funding for our department, that's just our reality.
Yes.
I just wanted to know where it's written in this law enactment process that you can either go the special general meeting vote or the referendum.
Yes. And so in the Akwesasne legislative enactment regulation that we have, in the section that is phase 4 dealing with the actual enactment method, there's 2 different avenues that you can take. It's to use our general referendum regulation, and all of these are accessible documents. If any of you want a copy, by all means, I can make sure that you get one. I'll have them on hand for the information meetings that we have, if you want to pick it up that way. And so that general referendum regulation governs a referendum. In the legislative enactment regulation, it has procedures in place on how to conduct a special general meeting vote. And so there's steps in place. And so at the meeting, if the quorum to start the meeting is 25 eligible voters of community have to be present at the start of the meeting. And in addition to that, a minimum of quorum of council. So the minimum number present in the room is 32.
I think you misunderstood me.
Yeah.
Where does it say you can do either or?
In the regulation,
In
the legislative enactment regulation. Yes.
Would you make up laws that you could profit from?
That
No, this community, like the Justice Department would profit from, like fines and regulations.
Taking away someone's right and selling it back to them.
You know, like speeding tickets and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Isn't that money go somewhere? Let's
Any-
pay for the license. CIA 3 got it.
Yeah. Any of the fines that come through the Akwesasne court stay to cover and offset the cost of the court. When we're looking at the Justice Department, there's no real way to do revenue generating, just within the realm of the work that I do. And so for me, I'm grant-based, so I will try to keep track to see if there are any grants that come out
Do you get
that we can apply to.
donations?
Huh?
Give like donations of money to get laws put into place? You have like a donation policy, like somebody has like $10,000 and say we need a law that
Yeah.
has people.
Yeah,
It's a bit of a conflict there.
yeah.
Well,
All right, are there any other questions on this presentation? Because we're gonna have to move along. All right,
Just one, the 32 people being in that council can flip the switch and be counted as community members towards that.
So the only one, so out of eligible voters, all of council are eligible voters. So out of eligible voters, the only one who can't vote is Leona Benedict, the chief electoral officer. And that's because in the election law, she's not able to vote. And so the 25 community members, no, you need to have the 25. Once you have 25 community members, then all 32 people will vote. If all 13 people are there, then there's max. That number would be able to vote.
What if 5 people show up?
Okay, if you don't get 25 people, then they reschedule it to another date. And then at that meeting, if you don't reach that minimum number of 25, then I think it is dead, then it stops. Okay.
okay.
But you have to make sure you're registered to vote.
All right, thank you very much, Kerry, for the update and the conversation on the Akwesasne law process. Okay, so the next item that we want to provide an update on the Grass River cleanup. So the last general meeting, we did provide a presentation. There has been some ongoing work that has been happening on that file. I wanted to provide an update. I look to Edward Rompoint to give us that update.
So, upon the last general meeting where we had Dean Wilkins from the St. Louis Mohawk Tribe Environment do his presentation, we called up and tried to establish a meeting and discuss the ongoing dredging of Grass River. And since then, we've been a few other meetings, which was the latest one being held earlier this week. And the topics of discussion there was of interest to the Mohawk Council and the community was the water monitoring, the testing, on a daily basis. So when we had that discussion with the tribe's environment, they kind of gave us the data that they had gathered since they were dredging. And one of the things that we discussed was keep that communication going with our environment department as well as our water intake department, which was John Adams, who was sitting in on the meeting. So throughout that meeting, what we had identified was, after they did their presentation, was the fact that we wanted to continue that, and with our intake plant with John Adams, as well as Jay Wilkins with the Environment Tribe, they would keep that communication going on daily testing as well as other specific tests that are related to the PCBs. One of the other things that we're working on as well is when we were at the Great Lakes Water Forum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, we had met with the representatives of the Environment, Climate Change Canada and EPA. And in that discussion, we had brought up the possibility to see if we could look at lobbying for funding for our side so that we could do more monitoring on our own and start capturing more data. So right now, where that stands is we're still in the lobbying process with it, but it doesn't stop the testing that we're actually doing right now, as well as the data that we're getting from the tribe. Another thing too we put forth was the continuous communications, even after the dredging stops, and how we can work together on additional projects that come up in the near future. Pretty much that's where we're at with that update on the Grass River, and we'll continue to keep the community updated on it as we go.
Any questions?
Okay, I got a question.
Yes.
For the daily water testing, I live right down at, like, I just walk behind my house and where the Grass River comes out, like take a water sample every day down to your water team down in St. Regis. They do testing, right?
Well,
they do it every day, but they're going across every day.
Yeah, the testing that they're doing is right at the intake in St. Regis, because that's in line with the downflow from the Grass River. So the tribe does their intake plant for the tribe.
It's been already diluted.
One in St. Regis.
Diluted in a solution that's how many miles down the river?
Well, that's,
you gotta get it right where it comes out. That's where I live, right where the Grass River comes out.
There is water column testing points that they're to try then going right by the grass into the St. Lawrence.
Yeah,
that's the data that we're getting.
I don't even swim in there. I go way up to the beach in Mamasu now.
But one of the reasons why we're doing it at the intake plant in Benogville is because that's the water supply from Benogville and just like that. So if there's any spikes in the testing, that's where the area of concern becomes, and we address that. So that is the purpose of why we're testing by the intake.
Anything else on that? Okay. Thank you, Edward. All right, so the other item that we want to provide an update on was what we have called the CBSA Design Thinking Initiative. So there is a handout in your packages. It's an executive report from a number of sessions that was held with various positions within the CBSA. So just design thinking is a design methodology that's based on bringing together all of the stakeholders that have an interest in finding a solution, or that are involved in finding a solution to complicated situations. So that's what design thinking is. This methodology is used in various different forms. The CBSA had approached us probably about a year ago to inquire whether or not this was an initiative that we would be interested in hosting with them. So on April 1st and 2nd, with the help of consultants by the name of CT Labs, who are design thinking experts or consultants in that field, we had a joint session with various stakeholders from the Government of Canada and from our community. And that is listed here in the first page of the report. and it outlines what some of the focus areas would be. And as we go through the report, the second page and the third page talk about from a session that was held earlier this month on June 19th. So there was 3 sessions that were held as a group to go through some of the areas in which we continue to face challenges with respect to the CBSA. So there's a number of charts in this report that you have, but I just want to draw your attention to the bigger one that's here. It's the 2 pages that is at the back. And this chart here is really the issues and challenges that have been identified jointly by various groups, including council, including elders group, including youth, including business owners, including just heavy users of the border, and now as well from Government of Canada, representatives from CBSA, Public Safety, Immigration Refugee, as well as Indigenous Crown Relations, the CBSA Union. They're all fed into identifying what these pillars are that go from the top to the bottom, and then what those areas are from the left to the right that continuously affect our community and that would be able to assist in making changes. So the session on June 19th resulted in this chart here that has the circles and stuff. And one of the things that was committed is that in order to work through some of the issues on the chart, it's not just a single department of the government or a single organization, i.e. the MCA, that can work on these issues. Because the way the CBSA operates, they administer legislation. Legislation can be drafted by maybe Immigration Canada, maybe Public Safety, maybe Canada Revenue. There's lots of legislation that affects how the CBSA operates. So in order to be able to make changes in those, you have to have representatives from there. As well, on our end, community-based solutions are not only with the MCA as the governing body. The Mohawk Nation is also affected. The Saranjwak tribe is affected. So that is one of the things that going forward, there's going to be an examination of establishment of advisory committees to be able to assist in moving some of these initiatives forward. And that's what back to the circular chart, a bit dictates what some of these solutions may look like and how they interact with each other. So we wanted to share this information with you. Really, at the end of the day, it is about what are some of the actionable items on this chart. Right? The reports are beautiful and they look nice and have nice color circles, but it's how are these things going to be implemented and how is it going to change our experience at the border and our daily interactions with the customers. So we over the next several months, we'll be working to start implementing a number of these initiatives. You'll see that some of them are short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Obviously, the long-terms are things that we want to be able to start working on now, but will take some time, recognizing the complexness of them and things like that. I know that's a lot of information in this report, but we wanted to make sure that we're getting this to you and let you know that there are some other initiatives that are ongoing. It doesn't stop the day-to-day interactions that happen between our members of the council and local supervisors or court directors on incidences that continue to occur. We do know that some of these things are policy-driven, some of these things are people-driven, some of these things are physically driven by the location, and hopefully that the chart covers a lot of those areas.
I have a question.
Yes?
How many court orders are there annually? Because I see there's like a heavy part, right, on security techniques. And again, we have enough security here. Do we really need to see another security? I'm just looking at this aerial, here, the layout. It says court running.
Yeah, and I think that's When we talk about the port running, I don't know the numbers, we can find out what it is.
Yeah.
We have seen it in the paper. And
Because it would have to be a high percentage for them to be able to implement so many different things.
Well, it's not so much a security, you're not gonna put a security officer there to establish one presence. It's more so how the physicalness of the port can protect the safety of everybody, right? So when a port runner drives off at a high rate of speed, there's a high probability that one of us are in that line, right? Whether it be after the customs or when they will generally blow through the code. So it's what mechanisms can be put in place physicalness to slow that down. Obviously there's an issue as to why that's happening, which is another issue altogether. And it's also, part of that physicalness is making sure that people are aware this is happening. So there is an alarm that does go off, but looking at if there's lights that can be established and things like that. Other comments, questions? So we'll continue to, as this rolls out, refer back to this chart, and we can let you know on how some of these things are being actioned on, or what the latest of them is. But we just want to share that with you tonight. Okay. All right. So we'll now turn to business from the floor, and I ask that if any members want to address anything with the council, this is now the time. Yes.
Well, I just heard yesterday, now I've been going to the news for, and over the past 20 years or so, there's been some chiefs that have gotten complaints with the ethical conduct law. So what I want to know is, from going back and hearing the different chiefs that were charged were charged. The lawyers weren't paid for, and I'm hearing that you're paying for a lawyer now, or a chief. That's community money. So I want to know if that's true, and where's this money coming from? And these hearings they should be open to the public, because when a chief gets any kind of a charge, they're a public figure. So we're the ones, the community, we put that person there. So we should be entitled to attend these hearings when something like that happens. So is the current chief being, her lawyer being important? And where's the money coming from?
So I can't get into particulars on what the process is, because there's obviously a process underway, and we'll have a right to communicate that, but I can speak to generalities. In the past, when members that I can recall, a member has asked for council to support a lawyer, and council refused it. And so, under this current council, there has been no requests made to council to pay for any resources. With respect to the court process, unfortunately, we don't determine how the court was run. I guess ultimately it would be up to the judge or justice or the administration, perhaps, of how those hearings are conducted. So this time we're not. No request has come forward to pay for any legal fees, and the process is yeah.
Yeah, I'd like someone to answer this question without able. Yes, some other chief.
Can I go home?
I don't want to bring this up. I don't want to bring this up. You're probably sick of hearing it, and I'm sick of bringing it up. But there's so many people on this reserve right now, in the short distance, talking to people, that there's a big discrepancy as far as these land problems go. It's not addressed. It's getting worse and worse. The cops are starting to show up at their land disputes and everything else. In a short distance, there's one down east with 16 acres landlocked. Why can't that thing be brought? It's been like that for years. It's put a garage on, there's no road to access to 16 acres of land. A declaration was sworn at the land and estates office up west stating that the land was wrongfully transferred. The guy went up, did an affidavit, and said, I didn't transfer that land to these people, it was that person right there. Nothing been done, where do you take it? Ministerial order, remove an administrator of an estate, never appointed new administrator. They applied to INAC, said, look, I want to administrate the property. It hasn't been administrated for 7 years. They won't write back. There's another one, a dwelling, apparently a survey line. There's a house on the survey line. You can see the stake, the house is on there. Where do you take it to move it before there's a frickin' war? True and actual document showing administrational fraud. Where do you take it? Purchased and living on land for 37 years and someone else claims the ownership. Where do we take these things? What is the solution? So look through some documents in 1985, 1995, and 96. October 3rd, 95, there was a resolution number 196 passed by the council. The court was given jurisdiction to resolve any issue or dispute concerning land. And Kerry is saying that they don't recognize the court. So if you're not recognizing the court, INAC, how do you take this situation here and send it to INAC and get something resolved? Because are they actually going to fix it? September 11, 2003, there was a resolution number 167 passed by the council. 15 community members were trained to resolve all internal disputes by local institutions, not by external. We figured we could do it. We got rid of the Indian agent so we could take care of these problems ourselves. Oh, we'll handle it. It's just adding and adding up. There's a lot of problems. July 17, 2007, resolution number 113, a charter was made up of the Land Dispute Tribunal, a whole charter. All the meetings and the criteria behind it and the responsibilities of the charter. The tribunal had everything in place. Why is it that nobody has a place to go? Why is it that we can't take this problem and say, look, here's the documents and I'll prove to you that this is wrong? Why is it that we don't have that in place? A lot of people are asking that question. So I'm asking the chief and council right now, and I know where Abram stands on this, but others of you, what is the solution? How can we convince INAC that they're responsible for the certificate of possession? All certificates is under the authority of the Crown. They're responsible for any mess up on here. So they need to come down here, set up an office, and work with council to fix these one-on-one, every damn one of them. Or what we need to do is we have to figure out some solution that we can fix these problems. They're dragging on way too long. It's going from generation to generation. It's handed down. The land is bare. Nobody can get on it. Families are fighting. People hate each other. Community members hate each other. Things are happening. Is that the kind of system we want? We're responsible for this. It's the council, it's the people. We're responsible. There has to be some solution to fix the problem. If there's a wrongdoing, it should be approached and it should be fixed. So I'm just asking council, does anybody on the council right now, do you have a solution? Where can we direct these people to go, sit down with a committee and show them the document and convince INAC that a decision was made and they need to fix it?
Anybody want to respond?
Come on, guys, speak up once in a while.
I don't know.
I know, Dave, this is a difficult situation what you're presenting here, but if you go into all of INAC's description of landlocks, if you have access to water, INAC considers it not landlocked. Those are situations that I run into when I was investigating some of these land dispute situations here. And it's pretty hard too when we're trying to put recognition in the courts and the courts goes through, everybody presents their documentation and then a decision is rendered. But it's still not acceptable to the other individuals that didn't get the decision that was wanted. So they attack the court system. And then next thing they do is they take it to outside court. And that's what's happening in the past, and it's going to continue to happen. Yeah, you're right, there's a big big situation here that needs to be fixed and be attentive to. Then, to me, myself, if the committee has any types of solutions for something that's going to be recognized and sanctioned to decide on some of these land disputes, then it's great. We can't do it alone, is because every time a decision is rendered, it's being challenged. Either challenging the courts, or challenging the decision, or we're all big families here, and somebody gets either labeled as conflict, we should never have a hand in that situation, or he had a biased opinion or a biased decision. And I just goes on. So where do we start?
Well, I had a suggestion for that, and the suggestion was that the council contact the committee in Ottawa and bring them down here and set up an office and bring the people in one at a time and find out what the problem is and fix it. Because the council is not responsible. Once you get your self-government in place, you're going to be in trouble. Because they're going to wash their hands, and all the people with conflicts are going to wind up with all in conflict. So that self-government, you have to fix all these problems before you get into self-government.
And also, I want to add to that too, is there's some land dealings that happen between two different parties, whether it was family members or non-family members, cousins or whatever. When that land transaction happened, those documents were never taken and registered anywhere. They kept it on themselves. And as people die, houses deteriorate, documents are lost, then the conflict starts. So we also have, as people, have to do our due diligence. If you're going to do a land transaction with anybody, no matter how big or how small, and if it's all in order and all the signatures are in order, and it's exactly who owns the land you bought it off of, go get it registered, go get it transferred. And the surveying part is another issue where there's a big cost for surveying. I know council used to survey lands before in the past, but now it's so costly we can't afford it. But if we do go into this self-government and start taking over our lands and managing our own lands, these things have to be implemented before we can stand on our own feet.
The reason I'm bringing this up, Ben, is you know this, and a lot of you know, and I brought this up how many times, is the fact that we're moving in a direction now where a lot of these disputes are 15, 20, 25, 30 years old, and the people are passing on. They're handing the generations. Although I can show you the land is still barren. There's nobody on it because the family split and nobody can make a decision. The land, we have, I don't know how many hundreds of acres on the island that nobody's on because there's no solution. And if you go to the Crown will pass it down to the Prime Minister will hand it down to the Minister of Indian Affairs. It all trickles back down to the council. The council can make a decision, and the council can listen to these problems, make a decision, and force INAC to change it or fix it. That's the thing that you need to do, because you have that power. That's what you're elected for. You're part of their system, and you're the closest thing to the community that can fix it. And show them that you can govern. Show them that you're ready for a land sectorial agreement. You know what I mean? Because if it keeps on the way it is, we're going to wind up nowhere.
And Chief,
So, my first term I sat on the Akwesasne self-government work portfolio. And in there we had talked about land management, land code, land law. There's a lot of work for us to be able to take that over ourselves. But one of the things we said to Canada was we will not inherit your bad management of our land. We will fix every one of those land issues before this gets signed. We've asked that they start looking at providing funding so that we can get a surveyor that will come here and work with our OBS office and start working on going forward. All these land issues that are here, we need to start sitting down with the families and dealing with the issues. They have a will and estate person here that comes from that funding. Why can't they do it for land? So the Akwesasne group portfolios have been pushing for that at the table. A proposal has been written recently asking for that funding. So there's steps we need to take because we can't take that on out together and think we're going to do a better job at it. We have to know what we're doing first. So we've said, let's start at least with surveys and someone to come work with us here, just like you're saying. But we also said we will not inherit the bad work you have done. You will fix that before it comes back here. So we've had numerous discussions with Canada over at that table, and I'm positive a proposal was recently done for the land surveying. So it's small steps, but at least there's steps in the right direction, because we know there's numerous beyond what we can do.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of anger out there right now. I don't know what's gonna happen. But, something has to be done. If you guys have the power, you have the power to make a change. That's what you're there for, and you know you're elected for that. And INAC has to respect the fact that this is their council. And we're elected, the system is set in place, they need to listen. That's the problem with Canada.
I suggest that you put a committee together and make it well identified to the community members that we can address these issues with. We called INAC, and they said they only register what is sent up by this council. Back in the 60s, when they were stealing the islands, stealing the land, we were governed by Indian agents. They were stealing everything. We wanted this council, so we have our own people to represent us fairly, honestly. And let's take care of our own. People didn't register with Canada because they didn't trust them. They stole little Cornwall Island. They were stealing Loon Island. They were trying to steal Hamilton's Island, Stanley Island. I remember sitting on those camps. So we have no trust with them. So we called them to see what's going on with these land disputes now. And right now they say it all lies on this council. So this council is responsible to make them make those changes. So I suggest that we get a committee right here to identify, to work on these problems before we have a war.
Anybody else want to add anything? Is there anything else on that page?
I guess it's kind of that, though. Mine's more, I have a question for Connie. You had mentioned on your first term, I couldn't hear you either.
No, we can't hear it.
On your first term, you had mentioned that you sat on the NFW committee, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and so now I'm just looking at your monthly report and your work in progress. It says that you're a participant in the Assembly of First Nations. You've been appointed by the National Chief of AFN, and you're in Ottawa to deliver the final document honoring our ancestors by trailblazing a past and future. Can you update us on that, what exactly that is?
So, in my first term, I was asked to sit on the Chiefs Committee at the AFN for Fiscal Relations. And from that committee, we developed what Indigenous Services Canada, a document for fiscal relations for all of First Nations communities and the Crown. A recommendation from that document was to create an advisory committee to continue the work. And so recently, last September, there were 14 members that were selected from the Chiefs Committee and technical folks and technical experts in financing and different areas, law development, that were appointed by the Minister of Indigenous Affairs and the National Chief of the AFN to sit on this committee. And that document we just finished creating is it's a new fiscal relationship and a financial policy that's a draft that is now going to be put to all the regions of the Assembly of First Nations to review and look at for their input, to see if we need to change it, if it meets what their needs are, if it could be better, if we should stop the work, for them to tell us what's next.
Is that going to be open to the community to read the interim report?
It will be soon, yeah.
Okay, and also, did you receive any type of honorarium for sitting on that committee?
They just pay for my expenses to attend the meetings.
Okay. So in the future, will the funding to First Nations be using the transfer payments from Canada instead of, right, there's something like between AFN and
I didn't hear the last part.
Well, we're just a little bit confused, because during the winter, Abram, I had mentioned something about AFN at one of the meetings, and you said that you don't associate with them. So now I'm reading like, monthly reports where you are associated with AFN. Clearly, you're going to see meetings, and thank you for the clarification. I'm happy to know that you get it on our report, that they pay for your travel, and it's not coming out of our community monies. Because I think if it was coming out of our community monies, that would have to be approved by the community, because AFN is a corporation. It's not a governing body either. So I appreciate the work that you're doing to create things for First Nations to look over to see if it's fit for their communities. So Governor Yosto's question that she had was, so in the future, because you can't really get no honesty here of where Akwesasne stands and on the negotiation tables and all of that, but the thing where will the AFN become the source of funding where they'll just be giving First Nations e-transfers?
No.
And it's not going to be coming directly from Canada anymore because of determination policies.
No. That's nothing, none of our funding will ever flow through the AFN.
What about the residential schools? Because that's from the Indian Brotherhood, and I don't know how AFN got a hold of that money. But that's not right. For the 10-year funding, when we get this 10-year funding, does that mean that we no longer have annual federal funding coming in from the federal government? Like Indian money. Indian money is going to continuously come in while we have this 10-year grant, or are we expected to be able to live and move forward within that 10-year grant? And if we are supposed to move forward within that 10-year grant, are you still allowed in your capacity to go and lobby? Because if you're not lobbying, then I don't think we need such a big table up here, because we're going to have to save some money.
So the 10-year grant
Yeah.
replaces the comprehensive funding agreement that we have now. And the comprehensive funding agreement is about probably around $32 to $34 million annually. But the budget of the Mohawk Council is $110 million. So it's only less than a third of the money that are received in those organizations. Right? So it's not a grant for everything. The funding agreement they're under now covers education, social services, roads, it covers health, well, there's not health in there, education, roads, economic development, land registry, some money to support the council. Those are generally the services that are covered under the comprehensive funding agreement now. That's around $34 million annually. That agreement would be transitioned into a 10-year agreement. The provisions lift a lot of the restrictions in there for being able to either defer money, or which means not spend it this year or spend it other years, being able to identify broader community initiatives that the council and community want to support that are not restricted by a funding agreement. So you may have heard in the past where people say, well, why do you do this? Why can't I get this? Why can't, and it's because our funding agreements are driven, our policies are driven by funding agreements. So Canada says, here's $15 million, deliver health services, but deliver health services to everybody has a health card, right? That's a provision. Or deliver health services to everybody that lives in Canada, right? So these are restrictions that come with funding agreements. So the 10-year agreement would remove some of those restrictions, so there's more flexibility.
Okay. So is the federal government still going to recognize it?
Absolutely. So, yeah, so absolutely, when you say, is council going to sit back now, no. A third of the money is in this funding agreement. There's still over another $60 million that needs to be lobbied, that needs to ensure that the government policies meet our needs, things like that, right?
Okay, then my next thing too is the Bill S3, that's been amended, or I don't know if it's been ascended in Parliament or Senate or what. Bill S3, are we inheriting 30,000 members, or what's going on?
So we haven't received any official notification from the government yet. We had a number of community engagement sessions on Bill S3, We had hired Dolly McDonald to assist with that. The government hasn't said to us officially what they're going to do. We know that we have seen in the news that the minister has said they're going to go ahead and implement it. That law was actually passed in 2017. It's been on hold. We haven't officially received what the government is. But we can provide that information back to you.
Well, I just want to know also too, when you apply for funding, I don't know if this is a discriminatory question or what, but I know that with the Sandra Lovelace and Bill C-31, people gained their status back when we had lost their status. And they weren't given the status that they originally had, they were given Bill C-31 status. So I imagine the majority of our community has that. And I don't know if it affects our quantity of funding, so I'm just wondering if you had ever considered amending those and updating those back to 618. Like, does that affect funding? Is there more funding for 618 status?
So part of the S3 amendments is all of the 61, 62, 68 are gone. You're just an Indian or you're not.
Okay.
So all of that will be removed in this amendment. The funding levels is yet to be determined. Right? But that's obviously through those processes, those conversations that we had, is a concern that we heard from the community, that we fed into it and said, look, if you're giving us, X amount of money now for the registered members we have now, if you double that, is there going to be arguably double funding, right? And they haven't responded to that. I can tell you that every community in this country is saying the same thing, right? Especially the large ones. Six Nations has 26,000 people registered. They're projecting another, 30, 40,000 people to register. That Mohawk is the same thing, right? So, I mean, that essentially means there's a lot of people showing up for services that you all know we struggle to meet some of the needs now. Yes?
Did you say there was money for roads?
Yes, they're part of the funding.
Did you see the situation is in our roads?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to respond to that. The money that you referred to was to maintain the roads. The money that we don't have and what we have to lobby for is the design and reconfiguration of the roads and actually get the money for reconstruction. Is that road that you're referring to?
Any place you look, any place you look.
Okay, well, we did our priority list, and some of those roads are on our priority list, and we're hoping to get word back by this fall, and hopefully we can start construction soon. We already got the price tag, we already got the design ready, we're already proposing these paperwork to the federal government, so we can get our money to those roads. And we got a new grader to help with the snow removal this summer.
All right, okay. Here, go ahead.
I want to know what we are doing in Cornwall. I hope it's not another fiasco like the other people in Cornwall. What's going on over there? Why is that?
Well, I mean, we're trying to improve the relations that we have with the city of Cornwall. We're not doing any business dealings with the city of Cornwall, to do another, what you referred to. We're looking at ways how we can tackle common issues. One of them being, obviously the CSA is a challenge to us and the communities around us. The toll is a challenge to us and the communities around us. Community businesses not accepting status cards is something that is concerning to the city and concerning to us and concerning to all of you. So those areas are the areas that we're having conversations with the city, how we can find solutions.
I thought maybe they're making friends with you now because they want to do something with that land you gave them.
No, I mean, good friends make good neighbors, I guess. I mean, I'm not sure if that's not a principle we should support, but we're trying to improve relations to fix some of the challenges we have together.
Put a casino back.
That's a good neighborly. Anything else? Just to the back here. Go ahead.
Like the monthly reports, if there was one other thing you could add to the monthly reports would be how many days in office, how many days in travel. And if you're on leave, just like to say that it just helps the community have a better understanding of how much work goes on. And also, second part is maybe a recommendation of popcorn machine for general meetings.
Yeah, go ahead.
My question for Daryl there, I just wanted to know if there is now an active police commission.
Yes, there is.
The body has been fulfilled?
Yes.
And what was the date of that? What, have they been sworn in, or are they supposed to take an oath and prove?
Well, they all been sworn in, they're officially sworn in, they're now making their schedule for the year to have their commission meetings. But the first one should take place in, July 8th is the first commission meeting.
So they're not officially active yet?
They're not, they've been sworn in, but they haven't had their official meeting yet.
Okay, so July is the first?
July 8th is the first
And
one.
when did they get sworn in?
But
there hasn't been a election.
About 3 weeks ago, it was during the day.
Okay. Are you going to be doing a press release on that?
You probably could, yeah, you probably could do
I think it's necessary.
I could talk to the chief of police and see what he says.
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering, Abram, maybe someone else can answer this question.
Come on, what do you
But this is not, I'm just trying to figure out how the process works. I heard on the radio today that the cannabis application was complete. That, you know, the application, Caroline, you guys were working on, and it said on the radio that the application for the cannabis was, I guess it's out there now, the application's complete to apply. It's complete.
So the application was approved by council on Monday.
Okay, so this is my question. I mean, maybe it's wrong, but I went to the Indian Act and looked under exercise of powers confirmed or banned or council. Unless the context otherwise requires or this act otherwise provides, a power conferred upon a band shall be deemed not to be exercised unless it is exercised pursuant to the consent of majority of the electors of the band. So I looked under the money bylaw, section 83. Without prejudice to the powers conferred in section 81, the council of a band may, subject to the approval of the minister, make bylaws for any of the following purposes: the licensing of businesses. So my question is, if your application is out, and in the application they're asking for $2,000 to get a license, is there a bylaw passed that allows the council to issue these licenses?
It's also a federal fine to seize personal property of an Indian, so.
It makes you responsible. If there's no bylaw and you charge these licenses, you're responsible if anything happens. So a bylaw has to be approved by the majority of the band electors plus majority of the council. And it has to go to approval to the minister. Do you have businesses now? Do you have licensed businesses all over? See what I'm saying?
It's already legally have that ability prior to collecting money from anyone. If you've already collected money.
I'm lost for words, Dave. Are you won't let me speak, how's that? Is there anything else I want to cover?
Yeah, I wanted to know, I asked, like, a working task to work on these land disputes. Nobody here stepped up to the plate. You guys are elected in there to step up to the plate and let's handle these issues.
So I can say, if you let me, we will examine what those options are, and we report that back as to what those options may be. I mean, you've suggested a few. We always have to investigate that because if we form a committee and it has no bearing, then there's no sense in having a committee. Right? So I think that we can take a look at what's those options. You're first. Go ahead.
I want to know if Akwesasne has become a municipality now.
No?
No. And when did the name become the Akwesasne? Mohawk, the Akwesasne First Nation. Why are we that now?
What is that document? I can't see.
design thinking initiative, MCA, CPSA, on there, it says representatives from the Mohawk, Akwesasne First Nation. So,
It's in there.
Pay time.
It's a report and they meant the First Nation on it. You can have it removed, it's not official
Like
name.
you just said.
And it was offered by consultants, so we can. I think some of the more important things in that is what we're going to do together and what we've identified as issues rather than First Nation names. So that it has not been added to our name. Here.
Abram, thank you for always answering anything anybody
My
asks,
God.
but there's 12 other chiefs up there. You know, you guys gotta step up to the plate here. You all have portfolios, every one of you, and when they ask about land, when they ask about different subjects, there's more than one of you that work with lands in the states. You need to step up and answer. You know, if you don't know, stand up and say, well, I'll look into it. Put it on an action item. Get back to us. We need to know. That's why we put you there. Abram don't need to be answering every time.
I'm going to say just in defense to all of them, I mean, not that I tell them I have to answer everything, because they're always being open to. I mean, it's been just customarily that I'm the chairperson, therefore the spokesperson. I can assure you that a lot of them do provide, you know, into the discussion and the solutions which we have to cover. Wait, and just have Julie and then we'll go back.
When it comes to Rob's question about, and Dave's question about land and us making decisions on land disputes, I have a hard time with that, and I'll tell you why. Because every time we make a decision, it's a simple decision on an application, on a thing. You ask us these questions of where did you get that authority? So tell me, please, how are we supposed to make a decision on a land dispute if we can't make a decision about an application? So I get kind of, yes, you know, we are quiet. These are questions we take back and we discuss them following the general meeting. But you can't have it both ways. You can't question every decision we make and then ask us to make big decisions like land disputes. That's not in my realm and that's not my portfolio. And I wouldn't take it on because I feel it's a conflict because that's what my father dealt with. So I am quiet about that and I will be quiet about that. But I just think you have to think of what you want from us. Do you want us to make decisions or do you not want us to make decisions? Because you're asking both things. 1 minute you're questioning a decision we might have made, and then the next minute you want us to make decisions on something as big as a land dispute. So you can't have it both ways.
Okay.
I'd like to clarify how I asked that.
I have a speaking order, Rob, please. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that I'm fairly new, but I did spend 3.5 hours today at OBS learning and discussing the land disputes that you talk of, as well as membership and residency. So I do intend to learn a lot more in order to help.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to clarify that. We're asking, because we called the federal government and they said it lies on your shoulders. So I'm saying, okay, if it lies on your shoulders, well then, how do we get to this? How are we going to get answers? Where do we take it? The big question is, where do we take it for resolution?
We're not saying that you personally, the council, we're saying that you should set up a committee that they can see the problem, look at the documents, see where a mistake was made, and make a decision with this committee and address it to candidates that way. It's not to make the responsibility, like Don was saying, the portfolio holders can work on it. But we're asking for a solution. We need a solution because there's no place to go.
We will examine the options. We'll report them back. Yes.
Thank you. After listening to everything that's been talked about in regards to land and it being land is such a big issue. why isn't there like a commission? You have a police commission, because policing was a big issue back in the 90s. They developed a police commission, and now this land is been going on for 60 years. But there's still no land, there's no land commission where people will apply and get on there for X amount of years, but yet it still goes forward. And then we ask 13 people, what are you gonna do about it? But yet, there's no land commission, a set of people that can make those decisions with you, alongside you. But it's such a big issue. Nobody wants to tackle it because, like you said, somebody's gonna get mad at somebody's gonna kill somebody, we're gonna go to war over this, we're gonna go to war over that. Somebody lost the documents, this is what they said. It doesn't matter. Where's the commission that's gonna listen to this? Where's the commission that's gonna resolve this? But yeah, we do have a police commission. We do have a board of education because that's important. Land is also important. Estates are also important. So where's that group? Where's that community group? Where are they? We push it to you and we get no answers and we get frustrated. So where is that? Can that be developed? Is that in your strategic planning? Maybe yes, maybe no. You're heading towards self-government, but we don't have a land commission for anybody to go to. We go to you, Abram. You have all the answers. Raise your magic wand. Give us the answer.
No. Go ahead.
I just want to say something before my question. A long time ago, our chiefs were stood up, right? Because we knew, and they knew that we had to have 7 layers of skin because you're going to have to be in situations like this where people are going to ask you to decide things or to help them or to give them advice. So council needs to remember that when people come to you with questions or problems, it's not personally attacking you. That's just the position that we're elected in, that you take on the responsibility. So now it takes me to my question of, in this, with the CBSA meeting that was on, and it says the Mohawk of Akwesasne First Nation is represented by, MCA, and it says Mohawk Council of Chiefs. I would like to know who was that was at that table from the Mohawk Council of Chiefs for traditional leadership. Who was the traditional leadership who went to that meeting?
It was, you looked. Howard. Richard and Howard. Richard and Howard. Howard.
And then I just wanted to remind everybody, when you talk about chiefs, well, we don't have a word for chief, but here we are. We're supposed to have patience for them because they're learning too, right? We're all learning about this band council mechanism that's not ours. That's why we're all sitting here mad at each other because this isn't our way. We're just trying to have patience for each other while we're trying to navigate whatever table they're sitting yous at on our behalf.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to know, and on your notes there, I haven't read it all, but are you not having meetings for 2 months?
Yeah, so we were going to propose that based on a consultation from the district meetings, that the next general meeting be in September.
Why is that?
Just to give the council opportunity for
Summer break,
I guess. Because we generally, in the summertime, we've seen historically the numbers go down. The district meetings will continue to happen. The council members have already committed to that, but we will have the next general meeting in September.
Yeah, but we're like hearing you talk all the time.
For 2 months. You can talk to your district chiefs now at their district meetings. Not here.
And Connie's the other one that speaks up too. We're
Yes.
tired of hearing her too.
Go ahead.
I just want to change the state limit in the village to like 20 kilometers, or maybe less, please. Like, slow your roll. You know who's the worst about that? Is the ants. Being honest. And another thing is I want those crosswalks fixed. So I've already been to the ants 3 times, and one of the officers said, Fallon, I need But anyways, that lacrosse box needs to be fixed because we want to start a house league. Because for the association, it's $600 registration. Not everyone has that. Their child just wants to learn how to play lacrosse. So we want to lower the speed limit in the village because it's a school. It's also we want basketball net to put back up.
Yeah, cool.
I grew up in the schoolyard, and some of the people in the area, I'll go talk to them, whatever, they said, no, it's too loud. I said, well, at least you know where the kids are, because that's where I grew up that night, and that got me to the indigenous games. So we need more preventative measures for our youth. I know ACT gets $3 million annually, and I already went to talk to them about some preventative measures. And I've already asked them to maybe put their windows down when they're patrolling, smile at people, say hi, wave to the kids. Yeah. So, yeah, the first one thing is, but if you can, I'll help with that. However I can.
Yeah, I just, thank you for bringing up the speed limit. It has been brought up at district meetings, and it has been brought up at actually almost in every district. So that this just gives us that more power, I guess, to say to the powers that be that this is something that everybody is saying that we need. It's kind of ironic when I was driving around, I noticed that, ours is 60 kilometers, but when you go to Portland, it's only 50 in their speed. So I thought, okay, those are things that you don't really realize until you're really looking at the speeds that people are going, and I agree with you, we do need to.
Thank you very much. Is there anything, yes?
We were wondering, earlier you mentioned about the land disputes. You said that when we do make a decision, where you referring to council, or you're referring to justice, like who would have made those decisions?
I was just referring that when council makes a simple decision on an application, clearly we made a decision about the cannabis application.
No. You were talking specifically with land disputes.
Yeah, that was, it was in general though that I was speaking. Land disputes, if they're.
She made a comparison. Yeah, it was just a comparison. Huh? What she meant was that when council makes a decision on something as simple as accepting an application into effect, we get challenged on it, but now you want us to make decisions regarding land disputes, and you're telling us we have no authority. So she was kind of comparing the two. Yeah.
So you have no forum for land disputes then?
Well, if I recall, way back when there used to be a land tribunal, but that could never go anywhere because their decisions wouldn't be recognized by INAC. And so we weren't any further ahead. So I don't think that ever progressed into anything.
April, did you want to have something?
In regards to the lacrosse box, you spoke with X about the lacrosse box?
Yeah.
Okay. You can find a working group, you can get a group of people together and we can work on that. I know with Brian King, he's the community coordinator and we have some access to some funding or something like that, so if you can just get a hold of me, we can work on that.
The only reason why I go to act on that is because it's an agreement that they had with the recreation committee, and that's why they have the garage and whatever. So I just want them to stay with that. Obviously, I don't want them to use all of their $3 million to criminalize the people. I'd like for them to put some type of preventative measures in there. So that's why I said even if they wanted to paint the box black and yellow, like Axe color, like I don't even care. I just want the kids in the village to have something to be proud of. So I don't know. I told Norman that I was all for going in to do a presentation with Tyson Thompson if I had to. But he said that Sean Wood would probably be all for it, but Leanne O'Brien was not really. So at the time when I talked to him, Sean was out of office for 2 weeks. So I didn't stop back in there because I'm waiting for Sean to get back.
But regardless, we can locate something.
Yeah.
All right, good. Canada?
Yeah.
Come on, it's in there, Pat.
Oh, the only thing I wanted to bring up was, When Vanessa was sworn in last week, 2 weeks ago, I don't know if Joyce talked to you, Keith. Did she talk to any of you? Did she talk to you?
Yeah.
Okay, did she tell you all about?
Yeah.
I felt like, well, when my husband and I went in there to go sit, the chiefs were sitting over here like that, and then we were gonna sit over here at the end of the tables. And then we were told, no, you can't sit there, you gotta sit over there. So I said, okay. But then as I looked around, I said, why aren't we all mingling? Why aren't we all having, sit in between each other and start talking and what? Like it's separate. You belong here and us belong over there. You know, and we're the ones that tell you what to do. You don't tell us. You know, that's the feeling I got, that we're down here and you are up there. Nobody mingled with anybody. Nobody came to me or my husband to talk. There was only, well, a few people that went. The other thing, when I heard that when Dennis got back in, you had a dinner for him on a Saturday and spent a lot of money putting him in there, then 2 weeks later he resigns. She didn't even get a chance to speak, to tell how she felt, you know, being sworn in. Who organizes your stuff?
Our staff do. So I apologize that you felt that way, and I really, pardon me?
I really felt.
Yeah, I'm apologizing to you right now, and that's the last feeling that I want any community member to feel in any one of our homes, right? I do take a bit of offense earlier when a young woman said that we're mad at each other, because I can tell you that I'm not sitting here mad at anyone. You may not like me how you want, you may not want me to speak, you know, you may want to chastise me. I'm not going to leave here feeling bad, right? And I don't want anybody to leave these meetings feeling bad. You know, the point that you made.
I don't either.
So by saying that, you know, you felt like council's here and you're here, on behalf of council and our staff, I'm sorry. And we'll do our best that does not happen.
Yeah, try to mingle.
And when Vanessa wasn't able to speak, that is my fault. And I apologize to her for that. And that was because, you know, I wasn't going by an agenda and it just slipped my mind. And as far as the cost of the dinner, I can assure you that the amount of food that we had there was the same one that we had 6 or 7 months ago. So, you know, I apologize that you felt that. We will do better. Thank you. I have another one here first, but I just have to go ahead.
I just want to, I've been, you're talking about these decisions and all that, and I haven't heard nothing about our own court system. If it was taken to our court and then somebody appealed and it goes off reserve or...
What goes to our court?
Any kind of, that goes to our court?
Well, that was a lot of the discussion through the whole evening where we talked about, see, land disputes can't be decided in our court. And earlier they asked the council to make decisions.
Is it because we don't have a law for the land?
So earlier we spoke of the fact that in order for us to clean up all these disputes, we may need a law that has regulations, that has procedures. We have to have authorities in our court to adjudicate all these land disputes. But we also said we needed INAC to step up to the plate and deal with them all, because right now all these disputes are their problem, and we shouldn't have to fix it. That doesn't mean we can't start working on how to go forward to have it, to not have them anymore. Because we talked earlier about some people may have papers that they've had and not registered with Canada because they just don't trust Canada. And that's a legitimate reason. But when they go to our OVS office, there's papers there that are registered. So here we have a dispute. How do we resolve it when we can't make decisions here on our land because it won't be recognized by INAC? So they've asked us to step up and either come up with a committee or come up with a way to deal with land disputes. Another member spoke of having a land commission. So we have to, and as Grand Chief said, we have to really figure out how that plays out. Because if we don't have authorities to make those decisions and those decisions aren't recognized, why would we make them? So the self-government table is working on a code and a law and regulations to follow that. So we're, as I said earlier, we're moving forward, but not at the pace we would all like to be moving forward.
But that doesn't even make sense what you just said. If INAC is your governing body for our land, and somebody doesn't feel comfortable registering a document, when they're in control of the situation. So say I buy land off you, I have the document, I don't want to register it, that doesn't make sense, because if that's our governing body, so it would seem like whoever has the document registered.
So the example that was provided to us was probably something that happened 50, 60, 70 years ago. They didn't have trust in the document. He said they all took our lands in one way or another, so they might have kept their own documents. So now later on, somebody has another piece that was sold, but how did they sell it? So there's things that have happened that maybe Canada decided to register the land without consulting everybody involved in the issue. Right now, when they're supposed to be settling estates, they may not be dividing those lands up the way they're supposed to be done either, creating more issues. So I think we know there's a major backlog in land disputes, but we're also trying to make Canada accountable for resolving all of those.
But the thing too, I don't know like what the situation is that he's talking about back there, but like you guys have had a land in the state office for I don't know how long, but there maybe are land disputes going back before then, but there are land disputes since then.
Yes. And
it sounds like you're saying, no, that was your problem. You guys did that. Not since. You guys have had a land in the state's office. There's issues since then. So it seems like that would be on Mohawk Council.
There's probably stuff on our side too. There's no doubt. And like I just said, everything needs to be cleaned up. But we also have to have something to follow when we're cleaning it up too.
But right now, it would have to be who's registered.
Yeah.
Like that's what it is. That's where it is. So I'm not sure.
And that's the issue too, because when you say it has to be who's registered, well, we have to send everything to them to get it registered, right? As we just said. But now he's saying that they're saying that these are all on us. So obviously we have some work to do in talking with, I always call them INAC, I forget what their newest name is, but INAC, and talking to them about, okay, are you saying that we can make these decisions and you will record it? Because that's the bigger part of the picture.
Yeah.
We could put people together and have them make that decision, but they have to recognize that these people have that authority to make that decision and record it. If they don't record it and if they don't accept that as a decision, then we've just wasted everybody's time in that circle. So that's the quandary that we're really stuck in when it comes to land disputes. And I remember when we first got on, we did the land dispute tribunal, and we had the charter, as somebody mentioned today, but it's getting I don't want to say approval, I hate the word, but getting them to recognize that group as a decision-making body, that's the bigger part of the whole picture.
And we just, to close that up, and we said we would look at what those options are. This is not a wheel that we haven't implemented already, and we'll report that back. I mean, obviously, from some of the information we heard tonight, maybe the government changed their position, we don't know. Because if they're saying, well, the council has to make that decision, they weren't saying that before. They were saying, I don't care what the council says, this is what it is. Right?
But it kind of seems like somebody can come at you and say, well, I'm disputing your land, and I have these documents. And then, okay, well, there's a dispute.
Yeah.
But if your documents aren't recognized,
there's lots of varying factors here.
I think,
hearing what's said, I think it kind of all has to fall on council first with the approval of INAC that we are the governing body of Akwesasne. As long as you get that piece of paper from INAC saying start your land commission or whatever it is called, and whatever decision is made between that commission and Mohawk Council, final one. I know that's not going to be overnight, that could take 10 years, but take 2, take 3, but that would probably be somewhere to start with this council saying this is what our community wants. Now, we recognize what our community wants. If you say yes, there you go. Then you can get your commission. Then you can get your 2 people from each district, 3 from each district, or wherever to start having all this. It's not going to happen overnight. It'll be a long, long time before something is going, but at least you have to start and get it going.
All right, this is going to be the last call. Right in the back.
And that's, are they amending the Indian Act or are they getting rid of the Indian Act?
So what we're doing is we've already got our own membership code, our own election law. We're going to start working on getting out of certain sections of it, not all of it, but sections that have not been good to us.
Okay.
So
we're still going to be Indian?
Yes.
We're still going to be Indian?
Yeah, we will.
Just a second.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to now move to read this resolution for the record. So, Mohawk Akwesasne accepts and approves the minutes dated May 23rd, 2019. So, as mover, moved by Bill, second by Julie. Discussion on the resolution. Discussion's been called on the resolution. All in favor? Any against the resolution? None against the resolution. So the district meetings will occur at Villanova on July 8th. Steiner will be on July 15th, and Ganadago will be July 15th as well. And as reported, the next general meeting will be September 26th at Ganadago Recreation Center. On behalf of the council, thank you.